there are no files and it's all shut. Thank you, goodbye, nothing to see here. But it weren't long before he was plying his trade again, in trying to make some excuse for why the files weren't being released. I mean, I think his first effort was that Trump was holding back the files because he was blackmailing the deep state. And then I saw another one where the question was, is Trump being blackmailed by the deep state? I mean, talk about disappearing up your own backside. When you've got to face the bloody facts. And they are that Epstein and Trump did anyone think that this cult wants open human minds? He wants closed human minds. And it's got people out there who are closing minds all over the place. You've got religions closing minds. If you believe in a religion, there's vast areas, or whichever one it is, there's vast areas of potential awareness, knowledge, insight that you won't go there. You won't go there because it will breach the walls of your religious belief and a political belief, left, right, MAGA, whatever. You won't go somewhere else where insight, information might be beneficial to you because you ain't going to leave your political belief system. We've got to put down these fault lines of division, these fault lines and these walls of perceptual programming here and no further, and open our minds to what's really going on. And I tell you, it's nothing like we think is going on. You're making offerings to the gods. What do the gods get out of it? And then big pennies start to drop. The whole banking system start to drop. When you realize that these entities in this astral dimension, which interpenetrates ours, are feeding off low vibrational human energy. And as the terror comes off the victim, they're feeding off it. Perception is, I'm just a human. I'm just the labels of human. Or I'm subject to some judgmental God.
Hello, everybody. This is our 7th interview with David Icke. We've been reading his books for years. He is so far ahead of the game. There was a huge backlash against him when he predicted it would be more of the same with the American administration. And we are seeing everything he said unfold in front of our eyes. We've got the cover-up of the Epstein files. We've got a continuation of the war machine. We've got the globalists who just love big pharma, big oil, endless wars, human transportation, you name it. David called it all. And people are realizing that now. A lot of the backlash, they're realizing he was right all along. So thank you for coming back again, my friend. And how did it feel to be so prescient? Yet all these people were like, oh, you're raining on our parade. All these things are going to change in America now. And look where we are.
Well, the thing is, I've been here before. In fact, I've been here before so many times, you lose bloody count. When I first started talking in the 1990s, the early 1990s, about the fact that there was a global network, which I call these days the global cult, that was dictating through its web the direction of the world towards greater and greater dystopia and all the stuff that went with it. But people said you were crazy, and it turned out to be true. When I started talking in the mid 1990s, when I started to come across this stuff, that Peter and were the cement that held the web together, people were saying, you're crazy, you're mad, even more mad now. And then I was talking about a non-human force, non-human race or entities behind it all, operating from another dimension of reality that interpenetrates this one, a dimension of reality called the astral. Then I'd really gone freaking crazy. And then I started talking about the fact that we live in a simulation, a massively advanced version of a virtual reality computer game, and that the body is actually like a headset, does the same thing. Then I've really gone completely doolally, except that since around 2016, 2017, more and more mainstream scientists have come out and said, actually, it does look like we're in a simulation, because if we are, then so much is explained that we can't explain otherwise. And so you get used to it. And, you know, I've been doing this now for 35 years. I'm in my 36th year now. And and I've been doing it full time, traveled to 60 countries plus, researching it and talking about it. You build up a body of experience where you can see how it works, and you can therefore see what's coming. So I've been calling out Trump since he first appeared on the scene in 2016, running for the Republican nomination. And I've been doing it ever since. And after when you know, the alternative media did a great job in exposing the fact that it was, you know, or at least on some level, not what we were told it was. Actually, it was beyond belief. Actually, I then started seeing people in the mainstream coming into the so-called alternative media and taking it over. They were getting the big algorithmic support. They were getting the funding. They were interviewing each other to get the, again, the algorithmic support for interviews like that. And they have regressed the alternative media massively. You know, there was a point where people did, in the alternative, understand that we live in a one-party state, that it doesn't matter, as they used to say when I first traveled America in the 1990s, it doesn't matter who you vote for, the government still gets in. And what we've regressed to, and I think it's, well, I don't think, I'm absolutely certain it's systematic, is to the deep state, as they call it, which is just a national expression of this global cult, is the Democrats in America. It's not the Republicans and the Democrats anymore, it's the Democrats. And we've gone back into this absolute diversionary illusion that we have political choice. So it's not a case of which political party you choose to vote for. It's the fact that they're both expressions of the same force in the shadows, but they present themselves in different ways because they have different target audiences. So, for instance, you have had the real goal all along, as I've been pointing out for decades, is to fuse artificial intelligence with humans, the human brain, so that artificial intelligence becomes the human mind and dictates what you think and feel. And that the entire system is designed to be controlled by AI, which can be centrally controlled as a result of that, even globally. And I was observing how the so-called woke on the left, it's not the left I grew up in, but the woke left, was kind of going along with it. They were buying the whole technological revolution, and they were therefore subjected to the hard sell of your Gateses and your Schwabs and your Ray Kurzweils at Google, that if we fuse with artificial intelligence, we will be gods, and it's the next stage of human evolution. But on the other side, there was a group of people gathering in number, which in part had become known as the MAGA, who were skeptical about that. So there had to be a way of getting them on board. And along comes Trump, especially in the second term. And exactly what I said would happen. He's going to be a front man in this second term for the AI oligarchs, your Ellisons and your Sam Altmans and your Musks and your other people, Peter Thiel, big time, to sell AI to the MAGA, and doing so by telling them what they want to hear, and then behind that smokescreen, bringing in all this AI stuff, which is exactly what he's done right up to this week. It took 2 days after Trump's second term began for him to wheel out Larry Ellison and Sam Altman in the Oval Office to announce this up to $500 billion AI expansion. He's just brought out another statement about AI in which the whole story is the same, of expanding and expanding more and more of use of AI. And it's blatantly obvious now. He's just brought in a tracking of a health tracking system that he wants to introduce. And you've got Peter Thiel at Palantir, this company that was created with seed money from the CIA, and provides surveillance equipment and data monitoring equipment and technology for the military and intelligence agencies, not just in America either. And he wants to create this unified database, which can be, again, centrally controlled, and you can find out everything about everyone from a central point. And so it's all happening. And what they've been doing is telling the MAGA base what it wants to hear. We're winning, and then bringing this stuff in on the sly and justifying it in ways that appeal to the MAGA base. So you want to stop immigration? Okay, well, we need IDs then. We need digital IDs. We need this digital tracking to make sure we know who's in the country. Oh, well, I don't like the digital and I don't like the AI, but what if it will stop immigration? And it's so blatantly obvious to me, and was before he came to office, what the game was. And so what's thrown a spanner in the works, although it's a great diversion from the AI thing as well, but what's thrown a spanner in the works is this refusal to reveal what the government knows about Epstein. And that's been something that has made his base, not the inner core, which is a cult. It's a cult. He's a cult leader. He's a Jim Jones. Can't do any wrong, even when he does. But his softer support, and even some of his not so soft support, has started to drift away in relation to this. Because as I've said, since 2016, Donald Trump is not fighting the deep state. He's an asset of the deep state. He's just presenting himself as opposition to pull in those that oppose the deep state. And it's blatantly obvious. And when I've seen the these people that have come in from the mainstream since COVID, because, you know, to an extent, the alternative media was getting out of hand in terms of circulating information that people needed to hear. So you had to put a lid on it. And you don't necessarily have to put out people who are knowingly putting a lid on it, although there are some that are doing that. You just have to put people that know next to bugger all out there, promote them, give them great algorithmic support, and let them do their thing, which is to tell people that the conspiracy is only about politics. Actually, it's even about the Democrats now, and finance, when the real conspiracy is fantastically, almost for most people anyway, unimaginably greater than that, to the very point that the foundation of the conspiracy is actually experiencing a reality that's actually nothing like the reality we think we're experiencing. That's the whole basis of it. It's a long way from Trump or Harris or Biden or Obama, but that's the real conspiracy. And the whole idea of this hijacked alternative media is to build the barricade brigade, as I call them, to hold the sense of the conspiracy at its politics and finance and what have you, and to stop the real conspiracy being exposed. What you do with the people exposing the real conspiracy is you call them mad, or you call them dangerous, and you deal with them that way, which I'm extremely used to, of course.
So, David, it's like they campaigned on releasing Epstein files. They told us for 5 years that the video cameras weren't working in the jail the night of Epstein's unaliving. And all of a sudden, they say there's no files, move on, nothing to see here. Oh, we found a video. There's a minute missing. Some people say there's up to 7 minutes missing because the rest of the video has been sped up. I mean, how dumb do they think the public are?
Well, some of the people in the Trump administration, I would say most of them are bloody dumb anyway. That's why they've done such a terrible job of covering this up. But when you have made it such a focal point, and the MAGA have made it such a focal point, not doing what you said you'd do in terms of releasing the files, and let's not forget that Trump was prevaricating even before the election. He was asked, I think it was on Fox News, would you release the JFK files? Yes. The Martin Luther King files? Yes. The Epstein files? Yes. Well, a bit different with them. Yeah, I bet it is, mate. Because what's sickened me, Shaun, about the hijacked alternative media, and there's some fantastic people in the alternative media, fantastic people doing some fantastic work. But I'm talking about those that get all the algorithmic support, that don't get shadow banned, and are basically the stars of the new alternative media. And the way they have sought to cover, I'll call it the MAGA media now, because that's what it is. They've sought to cover Trump's back. I mean, you know, you had Alex Jones, who I think has been an absolute bloody disgrace to the alternative media now for a long time, with his Trump support and his efforts to explain away the otherwise unexplainable, and to defend the indefensible. But he was almost in tears when the announcement was made, as you say, that there are no files and it's all shut. Thank you, goodbye, nothing to see here. But it weren't long before he was plying his trade again, in trying to make some excuse for why the files weren't being released. I mean, I think his first effort was that Trump was holding back the files because he was blackmailing the deep state. And then I saw another one where the question was, is Trump being blackmailed by the deep state? I mean, talk about disappearing up your own backside. When you've got to face the bloody facts. And they are that Epstein and Trump were close friends for 10 to 15 years. And Trump would have known what Epstein was doing. I mean, below, but did nothing. And the latest thing, when he was on the plane, I think he said it when he was in Scotland as well, was that he ditched Epstein when Epstein started taking his staff from Mar-a-Lago, young girls. And he was asked if he was talking about people like Virginia Giuffre, formerly Roberts. And he agreed he was. Well, that happened, in 2000, and it was involving not Jeffrey Epstein directly, but Ghislaine Maxwell, who approached Virginia at Mar-a-Lago. And Epstein was invited to Trump's wedding in 2005. 5 years. And by the way, the 5 years when most of the allegations against Epstein, that 5 years they relate to. And it was a property deal that brought an end to their relationship when Epstein claims that Trump screwed him in a property deal in Palm Beach. But the whole story makes no sense. You've got all these videos of them together, these pictures of them together over a period of time. He lives Epstein about a mile down the bloody road from Mar-a-Lago. There's no way that Trump didn't know what he was doing, and he did nothing. I mean, at that level alone, we can take it as read. Anything above that, well, we'll see. But the whole story is obviously, I mean, it's like the Wall Street Journal ran a story about the fact that in May, the Department of Justice told Trump that he was in the files, he was in the documents. And suddenly it went from the files don't exist to the Democrats have doctored them. Oh, you mean they put your name in, Donald? Oh yeah, all Democrats did that. Yeah, oh come on, man. But you know, when I read a book. It was first written during the first term of Trump, but it's ever so relevant to the second. It's called the Cult of Trump, and it's written by a guy, Steve Hassan, I think his name is, who was a Mooney. He was in the Mooney cult a long time ago, and I think he got quite high in the Mooney cult, and then eventually, in his words, he got deprogrammed. And he then went on to study to become a psychologist, psychiatrist, specializing in freeing people, freeing their minds from cults. And he wrote this book, The Cult of Trump. There's things in it that I don't agree with on other things, not Trump. I think he sees cults everywhere, but to an extent. But on Trump, the guy is absolutely spot on. He's a cult leader. And what happens with your Jim Joneses is the cult members become so mesmerized by them that they'll make an excuse for their behavior, however bad it is. And that's what we've been seeing.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. It's with my sponsor, Shopify. When I started this podcast, there were a lot of things I had to figure out on my own. Algorithms, guest booking, marketing. I was a bit naive about what was involved. And as you get deeper into it, it starts to overwhelm your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started, such as my co-host Ron's Pokemon business. Get started with your own design studio of hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand style. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/Shaun, SHAUN. Go to shopify.co.uk/Shaun. Shopify.co.uk/Shaun. Link in the description if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks for supporting our sponsor. Back to the podcast.
There are people in the MAGA who voted for Trump who are going, hold on a minute, this is outrageous. I'm not having this. Fine. Good reaction. But there are others, the real inner core, who are running around making excuses for him. And that's a classic expression of a cult. Like you say, in terms of the prison in New York where he died, seems to have died. You don't know what the bloody hell's going on. Nothing would surprise you. But I don't know whether you saw this CBS investigation report into the prison. Cameras. Of course, only one was working that night. And that's the footage they released from the DOJ and the FBI. But as CBS point out, that camera only shows a certain part of the floor outside of Epstein's cell. And they point out that you could get in without being seen by that camera. And when you think that at the time that his demise, shall we say, that his brother hired a forensic pathologist who was a former medical officer with New York State, who said, this is looking to me like it's a murder, a strangulation, and not a suicide, because certain bones were broken that would not be broken in a suicide, but would be in a strangulation, which he said it was clear to him from what he saw on Epstein or with Epstein, is that huge force, his words, were used to kill him, to strangle him, in his view. And so nothing in this whole story adds up. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me, I lived through this and observed this, Watergate. What happened with Watergate during the Nixon regime is there was a break-in at Democratic headquarters. And we had, of course, the Bernstein and Woodward stories appearing in the Washington Post, thanks to someone they called the Deep Throat. And it took this sequence whereby there would be denials from the Nixon regime, more would come out, more denials, but the denials were getting less credible. More came out, more denials, less credible. And eventually Nixon had to go. And there was an insider there, Henry Kissinger, who was clearly orchestrating this when you look back at the background. And there'll be people, I'm sure, in the Trump regime that are seeking to undermine him as well now as a result of this.
David, it gets even worse, though. And I'm glad you mentioned Virginia, because the survivors we've collaborated with, Virginia, Maria Farmer, Juliet Bryant, they all look up to you. And you're keeping Virginia's spirit alive and her mission alive in what you're saying. So we appreciate that. And it's an absolute slap on the face, as we saw with Virginia's family yesterday, that the Ghislaine Maxwell, it looks like she's going to get either a sentence reduction, a pardon, or some kind of, she's going to fall through the cracks in the legal system. I mean, Trump, the administration has seen the backlash so far about the nonsense they've made up. And now they're going to go one step further. They've visited her in jail. They've not visited the survivors and spoke to the survivors. And now she might get out, and she's supposed to speak to Congress on the 11th. I mean, what is going on that they could possibly do that?
Well, let's not forget that Todd Blanche, the number 2 at the Department of Justice, is Trump's lawyer. He worked as Trump's lawyer before he got appointed to that post. And he went to interview Ghislaine Maxwell alongside Maxwell's lawyer, who is a personal friend. They appear on the same podcast together and tell each other how wonderful they are. And what you've got is Ghislaine Maxwell, who knows the score. Now, this is a lady who refused to testify in her own case because she, I guess, didn't want to incriminate herself. I didn't think the cross-examination would go well. And now suddenly she is apparently willing to talk. Now, if you know what she knows, and it's indicated that she will reveal it, and what she will reveal will be dependent on whether she gets a pardon or not, or whether she gets leniency or not, then you want to keep her on side. And I found it interesting that Michael Wolff, the not just the many times biographer of Trump, but also interviewed Epstein at length, hours and hours and hours and hours of tapes, he said, that because I think Epstein wanted him to do a book on him. That what Wolff said is that his contacts in the White House say that they believe that the letter said to be between Trump and Epstein and his 50th birthday, orchestrated by Ghislaine Maxwell, was leaked by the family, the Maxwell family, to, in Wolff's words, be a shot across the bow to the Trump and Trump regime to say, we've got stuff, what are you going to do about it, in effect? And it was in the aftermath of that letter being published by the Wall Street Journal, that of Murdoch, that suddenly Todd Blanche is dispatched to a jail in Florida to interview Ghislaine Maxwell. I mean, what we have to do is keep our eye on the ball see what makes sense and what doesn't of the evidence, become aware of the evidence. And also, this is crucial, absolutely crucial. And it's what has done for the mainstream of the alternative media. If you're a journalist, and you know, I've been a journalist since the 70s. I'm just a different kind since 1990. I don't have editors to say that can't be published. But if you're a journalist, the last thing you are is politically partisan. That is the end of you as a journalist, because now you're not filtering the evidence and saying, okay, what do I make of this evidence? You're filtering it through your political allegiance. And when an alternative journalist, in brackets now, or in quotes, like Alex Jones, is extraordinarily partisan towards Trump and Musk too, there's no way that you are going to dispassionately look at the evidence if it's bad for your guy. You might have to admit a few things because it's so blatantly obvious, but you're going to try your best you can to spin it. And when I look at this hijacked alternative media, I look at the Russell Brands, I look at the Weinsteins, I look at Tucker Carlson and these people who basically, with others, got Trump in the White House the second time. Without them, it wouldn't have happened. And why did this hijack happen? And like I say, I'm not saying that everybody's done it because they know what they're doing. A lot of them, most of them, are just promoted because they don't know what they're doing. But they have a limit on how they see the world and what they'll talk about. And also, if you can make them financially dependent on supporting Trump and the MAGA way of seeing the world, then you got them financially as well. It's like, what is it? There's a guy called Upton Sinclair who said words to the effect, it's hard to get people to see something when their salary depends on them not seeing it. And so what you've had is this partisan MAGA media who have promoted a candidate. There's others. The guy called Ian Carroll promoted Trump. They all did. Candace Owens, for a very long time, was a Trump promoter. And she was an Israel promoter before she changed tack. And so you can't be a journalist, a dispassionate journalist, who is dispassionately looking at the evidence and calling out falsehoods, whoever is the source of the falsehoods, if you are in any way a partisan supporter of one political side. And like I say, I'm always come from, since the early 1990s, the position that it's a one-party state, and therefore they're both vehicles for the same end. And I'll give you an example of that. You had, like I say, the Gateses and the Kurzweils and the Schwabs pushing how wonderful it will be if we confuse humans with artificial intelligence. And then you've had Elon Musk. And Elon Musk came along, and there were people in the alternative media that were calling him out as a transhumanist who was pushing the AI agenda. And then he bought Twitter. No, he was allowed to buy Twitter because they were saying, and it was true, the deep state controls Twitter, and what can be said on it and who's allowed on it. Yeah, true. So that means the deep state had Twitter exactly where it wanted it, right? Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to release the the Twitter files, just to show you, yeah, the deep state controlled it. Okay, so why did they sell it to Musk then, who was the self-proclaimed free speech absolutist? He's not, but he proclaimed it. And what happened as a result? I knew it was a scam when he bought it, because I've been tracking Trump for years. Musk, well, Trump as well, but Musk for years before that. And I could see how his companies were ticking the boxes of the World Economic Forum agenda, and World Economic Forum is just a front for the global cult anyway. And from the moment he bought Twitter, allowed to buy Twitter, and turned it into X, there was this phenomenal transfer of perception of him by this alternative media. Suddenly he's one of us now. He's letting a few people in back, and they're all great. Yeah, it's wonderful. But then they announced that they believe in freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. That if it's lawful but awful, you'll find it very difficult to find it on Twitter X. And they start shadow banning those people who are calling them out, and promoting those who are promoting the MAGA media agenda and the Trump agenda. And suddenly, Musk is being given a free ride, even though he's promoting the AI agenda more and more and more now, but he's been doing it for a long time. They're giving him a free ride because he's one of us now. Now, let's look at this. The hard sell from your Gateses and your Kurzweils and your Schwabs has been, we need to fuse with artificial intelligence because we'll be gods, basically. And so along comes Elon Musk, and he plays the skeptic. He's not, but he plays the skeptic. And he says, oh, I'm very worried about AI and what it could do. And that's appealing to the MAGA base because they're very skeptical as well. But then came a crucial point where Musk said, but it's inevitable. Now, that's a massive word in perceptual control and manipulation. Because when you're seeking to stop something, you want to stop it. Once you accept that what you want to stop is inevitable, now you're going into a completely different mode, which is to mitigate how bad it's going to be. So something really broke there. The waters broke there. If you accept that it's inevitable. And Musk said it's inevitable, and if we don't fuse with AI, then humans will be phased out. They'll disappear. So, okay, question. Mr. Gates, what's the outcome of your hard sell? Well, humans get fused with AI. And Mr. Musk, what's the outcome of your soft sell? Well, humans get fused with AI. Exactly. You're just playing a different excuse for different mentalities. And so now we are seeing this coming together of your Musks and your Thiels and your Mark Andreessens and all these other people, including David Sachs, who was appointed as the AI czar by Trump and crypto czar. They're coming together with Altman and all these other people. They may not like each other, all of them, though most of them do, but their goal is the same. And we're seeing the Trump administration introducing it. So in the end, you know, the entire conspiracy is control of perception. All of it. Everything that you see, including censorship, is about control of perception. If you control perception, you control that person's behavior. You control their perception of a deadly virus you control the fact that they will do what you say to protect themselves from the deadly virus you've convinced them exists. And so perception is the stadium in which the whole thing's played out. And what's happened with Epstein and the furore over that from the, well, at least significant chunks of the MAGA base, is that they've lost control of perception that they had before, which is Trump's on our side and Trump is our savior. He ain't.
So going back to what you said earlier then about Ian Carroll, Candace, Joe Rogan, Tucker, they were sucked in by the illusion of choice at the election. I think that's what you were getting at. Now, recently,
well, some of them were sucked in, and some of them it would have suited them to go with it because that was the best for them. I mean, you know, one of the most sickening things I've seen is Joe Rogan, who frankly I wouldn't trust to tell me the time in a room full of clocks, interviewing Trump just before the election and not asking him a single challenging question, allowing him to get away with the most blatant lies, where he's sitting there saying, "Oh no, I didn't say jail Hillary." What you did, you were orchestrating the chants. You loved it. You encouraged it. And then immediately on the night of the inauguration at the dinner, Trump stands up during his speech and eulogizes the Clintons who were in the audience, asks them to stand up, standing ovation for him. I love those people, or words to that effect. You're dealing with a fraud. They're all frauds. You know, because perception is the stadium in which this whole game is played out of, they're all after your perception. So you have the perception of Trump going after the Clintons in the first term, if he got in, which he did, until he's across the line and it don't matter anymore. He never intended to do it. They're lying to you because, you know, what happens in an election campaign? Anywhere in the world, the politicians look at who they need to convince to get elected, and they tell that constituency what they want to hear. They overwhelmingly have no intention of doing it, not doing what they say they'll do, and actually doing what they say they won't do. But they need to get across the line. And there's no contract between what they say in an election campaign and what they do afterwards. And so they tell you what you want to hear. And then when they get in, they do what they intended to do all along. And that's what happened. Do you imagine Trump, Shaun, saying to the MAGA base during the election campaign, what I'm going to do is be a front man for the AI Silicon Valley and Israeli tech oligarchy. And I'm going to bring in the AI control system and human AI fusion that you people don't want. I'm going to do this alongside telling you that I'm not going to have a central bank digital currency in America, because I know you'll like that. Oh yeah, oh Trump, we're winning. But what I am going to do, I'm going to bring in stable coins, which are just as programmable as the CBDCs. And it's the programmability which can dictate what you can buy and where you can buy it, that the whole scam is a digital money scam is founded upon. So this is the thing. It's not only that you can't be a journalist if you are a partisan for a political guy or party, but you cannot either see the wood for the trees if you see anyone as your savior and anyone in terms of, in effect, a cult leader. You can't. you're not making a perceptually dispassionate decision on the evidence. You're making the decision based on other criteria, which is Trump's the savior in this case. And we've got to deprogram ourselves from allegiance to parties and allegiance to individuals, and start to let the evidence be our guide, no matter what it is, and not other criteria.
So, David, you've been steeped in conspiracy research for decades. People like Ian Carroll and Candice, like you pointed out, they're relatively new to it compared to yourself. Now that they are exposing the administration for not releasing the Epstein files, do you give them some credit for that at least?
Well, I am supportive of anyone that puts out information that's valid. However, my question is, why did it take you so long to see it? I was calling out Trump in 2016 as a front man for Israel. It was blatant. His biggest funder was Sheldon Adelson, the casino magnate and ultra Zionist, $100 million. And part of that deal was that Trump would move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which was not just symbolic, but massively symbolic in terms of the dynamics of Israel. And Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk, this guy who's never seen a Trump backside he doesn't want to kiss, were in Jerusalem at that time when the thing was moved and the celebration happened and the ceremony happened. Very much in support of it. And yet it was obvious that he was owned by Israel. And then we had the second term, where he's funded by the widow, Miriam Adelson, for $100,000. Oh, by the way, in the first term, he also agreed with Adelson that he would acknowledge the Golan Heights, Syrian land, as Israel's land. And he did. And there's a location in the Golan Heights called Trump Heights, I think, to commemorate that. But in this second term, another $100 million from Miriam Adelson. And the agreement was that he will, at some point in this presidency, acknowledge Israel ownership of the West Bank, which is now basically being completely taken over by so-called settlers. And by the way, there were sanctions against the settlers who were stealing Palestinian land and property in the West Bank until Trump came to office the second time. And one of his first actions was to take those sanctions off. His virtual first actions, too, were to take all limits on the supply of weapons to Israel. This man is owned by Israel. And is it just a coincidence that Jeffrey Epstein was running a Mossad Israeli, probably the CIA involved as well, blackmail operation with Ghislaine Maxwell? Ghislaine Maxwell, who is the daughter of Robert Maxwell, who is a known Mossad agent, who worked for them for a very long time and died on his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, off the Canary Islands, and was given in effect, a state funeral on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, which was attended by the president of Israel, the prime minister of Israel, and a stream of current and former intelligence chiefs. And the idea that I met Robert Maxwell once, I was doing a film for the BBC, a documentary on a football club that he owned called Oxford United. And it involved me interviewing him in his office at Mirror Newspapers, because he owned Mirror Newspapers and many other papers. And when I left with the crew, I felt like I needed a bloody shower, because I'd come into the presence of pure bloody evil. So there you have Maxwell, an agent of Mossad, and sure other intelligence agencies as well, because in the end they all connect. And then you have his daughter running this operation with Epstein. And you know, I've talked to people, I'm sure you have too. I've talked to people who were girls at the time in the Epstein network, now women, who talk about the hidden cameras and the hidden microphones in the properties of Epstein, because it was a blackmail operation. Because, you know, you have those that are knowingly part of the cult and do what they do in support of its agenda. You have others who couldn't give a damn about anything except their own power and wealth, and you can get them on board and get them to do what you want to do with money and prestige and position. And then there's others that you feel the need to blackmail, and so you need things on them. And this is why the cult loves to have people in power who have done stuff that they don't want to come out, because then we gotcha. Look, mate, we can keep this quiet, and you can be wealthy and powerful as long as you do what we say, or you can not do what we say, in which case you wouldn't want that across the front pages, would you? And this is how it works. This is what when you see people who come into politics, sometimes with genuine intent, and they oppose things and they vehemently go against things, and then suddenly they switch. Now they're in favor of what they were against before. And sometimes it's telling people what they want to hear and then doing what you intended all along. But other times it's blackmail that brings that about. And so and you know, the thing is, I first came across the and networks in the mid-1990s, and I've been gathering more and more information ever since. And it is the cement that holds this whole cult web together, by those that are active, and by active, and also because those that are brought into those rings and situations so they can be blackmailed. And you know, we talk about the Epstein situation, and we should, but this stuff's going on all over the world. Epstein's not something that is unique, nothing like. It's happening everywhere. And it's all about, in the end, getting people to do what you want them to do to advance your agenda to a global dystopia. And I must say, maybe some people might think that it's stretching credulity, just a little bit, to think that Donald Trump was a close friend of Epstein for 10, 15 years. And they would have things on him, have no doubt about that. And then out of nowhere, he suddenly runs for office for president and wins twice. And in office, gives Israel virtually everything it wants. I mean, if people think that's a coincidence, I've got some seafront property in the Midwest they might like to buy.
So talking about the cult then and esoteric practices, when you saw the temple on Epstein's Island, what did that signify to you?
Well, these people networks connect into the satanic networks. Doesn't mean that every people is into. I'm saying the rings themselves interlock, and they're global rings. I mean, I saw you do an interview recently. She didn't believe that it was a unified organization. Well, that's what Ian Carroll said on the Rogan show. It's not a. What did he say? Let me get it right. I don't want to misquote him. It's not like it's literally a cabal of shadowy Jews around one table. It's just an alignment of many different interests, different families, different corporations, different bankers or organized crime groups, all sort of playing games for power. And these guys have that much power, and those guys have that much power, and interests tend to align. Bullshit. This is a highly organized cult, but it's fiercely compartmentalized. So the vast majority of people who are in the secret societies do not know what they're part of. But it's orchestrated and organized in a very detailed way from the inner core. And when you go deep enough in the inner core, it is a table with a few people sitting around it. And it, to put into context the satanic and bar rings, we need to go way, way beyond Trump or Harris or politics or what the mainstream alternative media, the MAGA media, go on and on about. We have to appreciate that this global cult is a vehicle within human society, what is in effect the human band of frequency, working on behalf of entities in another dimension of reality, close to this one, and interpenetrating this one, but well beyond our ability to see. And without understanding the entities in this other dimension, this astral dimension, we cannot understand what is happening in the human reality. And it's that which this cult is desperate to keep from people. Now, it's so fantastic compared with people's perception of reality, which is downloaded to them from cradle to grave, that it's easy when people like me come out and talk about this to say he's mad, he's crazy, it's not possible. But this is the thing. I mean, another quote from said that it was that people that talked about shape-shifting reptilians were basically making it or derailing the credibility of talking about these rings and rings and things. You cannot understand these rings without talking about it. And she said it was outlandish that impossible metaphysical experiences were talked about to derail conversations about the cult and the power in media and politics. Now, so it's just about media and politics, right? Okay. Well, that's what the alternative media, the hijacked alternative media, want you to believe. And in fact, these impossible metaphysical experiences are perfectly explainable. But if you want to keep people in ignorance of what is actually happening, you keep them ignorant. So we have, first of all, two worlds within the human world. One is the world of the cult, and they are broken up, those organizations which have an interlocking leadership ultimately, though most of them don't realize that. It's a compartmentalized structure. So only the real inner core know the real picture. The others only know enough to play their part. Need to know, usual story. And the difference between that cult structure in the hidden and the in the scene human population structure is knowledge. The secret society structure passes on at the highest level very advanced knowledge, about the agenda for humanity going into this AI dystopia, but crucially about the nature of reality itself and the illusory nature of physical reality, because it is. You've only got to look into quantum physics to see that. And that same cult in America, through the Rockefeller family, very much involved in it, and others, created the American education system. So this code that passes on highly advanced knowledge through its structure in secret is also the creator of the methods of communication and information and the sources of it that the population get their information from. So they created the education system. They own the media. They have moved in on the alternative media in as I talked about, because if you're after the MAGA, it's no good using your old method of going through the mainstream media, because the MAGA don't trust it. Quite the opposite. So you look at the sources of information that the MAGA, the potential pushbackers, not least on the AI agenda, get their information from, and you target that. You say, well, they get their information from the alternative media. Okay, well, we'll move in on that then. And they'll think they're being told the truth when they're being diverted into cul-de-sacs that'll take them nowhere. So you control the sources of information that the public form their perceptions from, and you make sure that that is squeezed. Especially, you want to squeeze their sense of the possible, because if you can hold and limit their sense of the possible, then when people like me come out and say this is what's happening, they'll say that's not possible. You're mad. It's brilliantly done, but then they are experts at manipulating perception. So you keep the public ignorant. So the idea of other dimensional entities manipulating human society, it's beyond their sense of the possible, beyond their sense of normal. But to understand, like I say, the power rings and the rings, you've got to understand who's actually orchestrating this whole control and dystopia of humanity. And it's in another dimension of reality. And when I was uncovering the nature of this cult in the early 1990s, a long time ago now, and I was starting to track and investigate various people that were clearly part of it, where it led me again and again was to Peter and And then you ask the obvious question, why? Why would they be involved in that? There were so many of them. And then you think, okay, so what is Satanism? Well, it's worship of these, quote, gods. Well, who are these gods? Because these people are deeply sick, but in an intellectual sense, they're not freaking stupid, not those in the inner core anyway. So they're not going to worship gods that don't exist. They're just simply not going to do it. They leave that to the population. So they then I started looking back, and I started to see that all over the world, every era and culture worshipped pantheons of gods everywhere. So you see things like the Greek pantheon, Zeus and so on, and you say, okay, I've heard of that, but they're everywhere. But they're everywhere under different names, because different communities, different cultures, obviously call these gods different names. And then you look again and you say, well, they were sacrificing people to these gods. Actually, they were sacrificing overwhelmingly children, sacrificing young virgins to the gods. Anyone think what that might be code for? And then you ask the question, well, the first question, before you ask that question, you realize that the gods that these ancients all over the world were doing human sacrifices to are the same gods that the elite today are doing human sacrifices to. And then you ask the question, like I say, so you're making offerings to the gods. What do the gods get out of it? And then big pennies start to drop. The whole banking system start to drop when you realize that these entities in this astral dimension, which interpenetrates ours, are feeding off low vibrational human energy. It's well known by mainstream science that every time we think, every time we feel emotion, we generate an energy, a frequency. And that frequency relates to the nature of the thought and the nature of the emotion. And so joy, love, appreciation, these are high, fast frequencies. But these entities are low vibrational in nature. That's why they do what they do. And so for them to absorb our energy, they need low vibrational frequencies that relate to fear, anxiety, depression, regret, hatred, conflict, war. And so these entities, via this global code, have no interest whatsoever in a world of love, a world of joy, a world of harmony and peace. They want all the things that generate these low vibrational energies. And long after I'd realized all this, I came across the work of a guy called Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute is now what he created and left. And Robert Monroe was someone who popularized what's called out-of-body experiences. It's when you have near-death experiences, when people, the body dies briefly and people find themselves in a completely different reality, and then the body is revived and they come back. And they tell very compellingly common tales. But out-of-body experience is when you are able to project your consciousness into the astral dimension. And Robert Monroe was so good at it that there was a military operation which was declassified by the CIA a little while ago, and it was called Gateway. And what they did is got together Robert Monroe and other people who had this astral projection ability, and they did a study on them and what they saw. And they went into the they would project into this astral dimension and then come back and say what they saw, and it would all be written down. You can go on the internet, put in Gateway Project Robert Monroe, and you'll see the background. And they saw in the astral so many reptilian entities that they actually gave them a name in the Gateway Project, the alligators. And in this same period too, of 35 years, I've come across people all over the world who have experienced these reptilian entities, sometimes in the astral, sometimes in the human, and have seen people, apparently human to start with, change into a reptilian figure, and then often go back again. And I've been putting this together, this evidence together now since 1996. And I've talked to hundreds of people who have had this experience from all walks of life and backgrounds. And then you look at the ancient tales from the ancient societies, and they're telling the same story of reptilian entities. I mean, the worship of the reptile is the oldest form of known human worship, going back tens of thousands of years. So you have these entities operating overwhelmingly in the astral, but they can move into our dimension. And I've said many times that every child should be told at the earliest time they can grasp it, that when they look through their eyes, they're not seeing everything that exists in the space they're looking at. They're seeing a narrow band of frequency. And anything outside that band of frequency that's operating in the same space, they can't see, which is why we can't see the astral. So according to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically human experience reality, is 0.005% of what exists in the universe in terms of energy in its different forms. Some say it's as high as 0.5. Doesn't matter, it's tiny. Visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see, everyone watching this now is seeing within that visible light frequency, is a smear of the 0.005%. So humans are basically blind because this vehicle will only decode that frequency band, which is why that's all we can see. So when a UFO or an entity enters visible light, to the observer, it's appeared out of nowhere. And when it goes out of visible light, it just disappeared into nowhere. Neither has happened. It's left the band of frequency that we can decode into visual reality. So that's why, that's the answer to the question you get asked all the time over the years. Well, if these reptilians exist, why can't we see them? Well, they do appear in this reality, and people have talked about them and their experiences with them, but overwhelmingly they're operating outside of human visible light, the visible frequency band. So they are feeding off this low vibrational human energy. That's what Robert Monroe and others in the Gateway Project and others who have done the same, who I've spoken to. That's what they say they ascertained in the astral dimension, and there's lots and lots and lots of more evidence in the human world for what I'm talking about as well, which I've covered in the books. And so we have to keep being manipulated into low vibrational emotional and mental states to produce what Robert Monroe called loosh, this low vibrational energy for these entities. Because when someone's in a low vibrational, anxious, fearful state, you can see it on their face, you can see it in their body language. What you can't see outside visible light is the energy they're giving off as a result of those mental and emotional states, because that energy is going into the astral dimension. That's why we can't see it. And they're feeding off it. The more turmoil, war, conflict, suffering, deprivation, the better. That's why the world is as it is and always has been. Imagine the bloody banquet that's happening day after day in bloody Gaza as a result of these people.
Is that why Boris Johnson scuppered the peace deal with Ukraine and we've had over 1 million Ukrainians die, blood sacrificed?
Well, in terms of Boris Johnson, I mean, you know, is there life on Boris Johnson? I see no evidence. He might have been a vehicle for it, and in some ways he will maybe know some levels of this, but he's a gopher. All these politicians are gophers for this cult. They don't put themselves on public display. They're the orchestrators. Last thing they want to do. So then we go back then to the sacrifice, the satanic rituals. Why were they sacrificing to the gods in the ancient world? And then when it became unacceptable to the population, they do it secretly ever since. What do the gods get out of it? Well, they get out of it low vibrational energy of a very powerful kind. I've talked to people all over the world again who have taken part in these rituals, often against their will, and sometimes eventually they've seen the bloody light. And they tell me, first of all, that the rituals are basically ancient rituals, which they still repeat today, because it has the vibrational energetic impact and which they want, and so why would you change it? They've told me how in the major rituals that these non-human entities, often reptilian, but not always, but non-human, manifest in the rituals, because a lot of these rituals, especially the major ones, take place on the vortex points. You know, we have this ley line system, which is part of a much greater universal system of energetic lines and electrical, electromagnetic forces. And where these lines cross, where two lines cross, you get a little vortex. And where massive number of lines cross, you get a massive vortex. And what these vortexes do, the big ones, is they thin out the energetic frequency difference between the human reality and the astral reality, which allows these entities, not necessarily for very long, but to slip through this conduit into the ritual. And so what are they doing? They are terrifying the victim. Imagine you're a little bloody kid going through this. These people have no empathy. They're just software programs. They have no what we would call human emotion. That's why they do what they do. They're psychopaths. You look at the super psychopaths. You look at the so-called hair test of a psychopath, named after the guy that basically invented it. The hair test is a list of traits, and if you have enough of them, you're a psychopath. And the top 2 traits: lack of empathy, unable to put yourself in the situation you're making other people suffer, and lack of compassion, deleted compassion, no compassion. These people are literally software programs. And if you put a software program in a computer and you tell it to do something, it will do it. It won't say, well, hold on a minute, mate. No, it will just do it. This is what these people are. They're software programs. And so they're terrifying the victim. And terror is a very, very powerful low vibrational energy. And while the Satanists in our reality are conducting the ritual, these entities, I guess almost all of them don't manifest, 1 or 2 do, but they're in this astral dimension, overseeing it, sharing the same space. And as the terror comes off the victim, they're feeding off it. And this is happening all over the world. You know, this satanic calendar with its Beltane and its Halloween and so many others in between, rituals, days, it's real. And these people do it. Now, if you are going to sacrifice a little for your gods, prats, then are you going to have any questioning of creating wars that are going to cause such death and destruction and suffering and turmoil and sadness? No. Why? Because you want them. Are you going to have any compassion for children in Gaza? No, none. You're just going to do it because you have no ability to empathize or to feel compassion. You're a software program. And this is the basis of the reason they do it, is the reason it goes from the ancient world right into the modern times, because they are making offerings to the same gods the ancients were. They just call them different names. You can call it the cult of BAAL. It's just another bloody name. They're talking about these entities. And, you know, when what's the name, says that, you know, it's basically talking about shape-shifting reptilians and all that stuff, and what have you, is derailing the credibility of talking about this stuff. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's explaining why it happens. And in terms of shape-shifting, let's talk about that. Because, you know, what was said in that interview, in parts of it, does need challenging in this metaphysical impossibility. To really understand what's happening in the world and what the world is, we have to realize that physicality is an illusion. And quantum physics, as it's emerged and expanded, has understood this. We are told that the physical world consists of atoms. Atoms make up the solid physical world. Well, if you look at the inside of an atom and go deeply enough into it, there is no physicality. It's just an electrical system of electrons going around a nucleus. And as someone said, to illustrate what an atom really is, if the nucleus at the center of the atom was a 10-cent piece, then the atom itself would have to be the size of a baseball stadium. And everything else is empty space. It's not empty. It's an energy that we're not aware of, but to the human vision, it's empty space. And that's supposed to make up the physical world. It doesn't. So what the heck is going on? Why are we being told all the time by orthodox science funded by the cult, you want to go beyond what we want people to believe? Well, funding stopped, mate. It tells us that we live in a physical world and everything's solid. Well, that is clearly, demonstrably not the case. And I just talk about how this thing works. We, in our non-human body state, are consciousness. Some people call it soul. Actually, we go beyond that even, but call it soul, whatever you like. It's consciousness. When a near-death experiencer, the body ceases to function and they find themselves in another reality, well, obviously they're not taking their body with them, have they? It's just expired. So what's experiencing that? Well, another level of energy is, which people call the soul. And so the body is a vehicle. It's a vehicle for us to experience this reality, this band of frequency, which is the human world. And so when the body expires, we find ourselves in another dimension. Why? Because the reason we've been experiencing this dimension is because the body is decoding it. If you could think of the body as a virtual reality headset, then you pretty much got the dynamic. You put into YouTube words to the effect of virtual reality headset compilations or whatever, and you will see many videos of people who put a headset on. Now they're in a room, maybe just like any other room, and they're in this reality. But you put the headset on, and within seconds, they're jumping around, screaming, running away, because their sense of reality has been hijacked, overridden by what the headset is feeding them. And what is it feeding? It's feeding their five senses. It's feeding their sight, it's feeding their audio, and in the more sophisticated ones, it's feeding their touch. And even with some of these chairs that move around, it's giving them the feeling of movement as well in relation to what they're being fed in the headset. And what they can do, because it's a headset, is they can take it off. And immediately they go, phew, oh, it was just a game. But if the body, which I've been calling since the 1990s a biological computer, is decoding this reality, which is a simulation, the dynamic of a virtual reality game is very applicable. Then from the moment you're in the womb and the body starts to form, to the moment you go out the other end in the cemetery, the biological computer is decoding this reality in exactly the way, in dynamics, that this computer is decoding the internet. So if you said to people who knew nothing about computers and nothing about Wi-Fi, that there is a level of energy, information in this room and around the world that you can that is a global reality. The internet is, and that you can decode it into a completely different reality on the screen, then people would call you mad and crazy. They'd say, well, where is this Wi-Fi? I can't see it. No, because it's outside of visible light. And yet, now people know about computers and they know about Wi-Fi. And you say, you know, there's a whole reality which you can decode into a completely different form on the computer screen. People say, oh, yeah, I know about that. Wi-Fi, the computers, yeah, know about that. And the only difference between your mad mate and, oh, yeah, I know about that, is knowledge. Knowledge that Wi-Fi and computers exist. Now, what is a computer doing? It's taking a field of information called Wi-Fi, and it's decoding it into a completely different state on the screen. My face is not in the Wi-Fi. Information the computer decodes as my face is in the Wi-Fi. And where is the computer decoding the Wi-Fi? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? No, it's inside the computer. And what's kind of really struck me over recent times, decades now, is how the technological explosion that we're seeing in the world mirrors the way we interact with reality and what reality is. So you take a Wi-Fi field, that in the greater scheme it's the simulation. The simulation is not a construct, it's a field of information. And it's like, if you remember in the first Matrix movie, the Morpheus character held up a battery and he said, the Matrix, simulation, the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world built to turn human beings into one of these, a battery. And that was a profound truth within apparently a fictional movie, because this is a simulated reality which we take to be real. And as a result of what happens in this reality and our interaction with this reality, we generate this massive amount of low vibrational energy, loosh, which these entities feed off. And so you have the body, and it's constantly decoding the matrix. And it's doing it through the five senses, which is why the virtual reality games can override the five senses and give you a different reality, which you react to before you do that. And you've only got to look at mainstream science to see the sequence. What's happening is the simulation field is held in the form of frequency. Frequency carries information. And I mean, you get the frequencies of television broadcasts in the old analog system. They broadcast the frequency, and the television decoded the frequency information into the television program you were looking at on the screen. It's the same principle. And so the five senses are locking in to this frequency information of the simulation. And the five senses, the ears are a classic. That's frequency information. Everyone knows that, sound waves. But it's all frequency information, including sight. And the five senses then communicate that frequency information, having decoded it into electrical information, and they communicate it to the brain. And there's different parts of the brain that specialize in decoding the different senses. And then the brain forms a sense of reality from that information. And it's a digital holographic reality, which we experience as external to us. I grant you that's what it looks like, but actually it's all going on in here, just as it's all going on in the computer as I'm looking at it here. And if you look at it, everything is frequency. All of it's frequency, which is decoded into other forms that we experience as human reality. I'm speaking now, and people are hearing my words, but there's not words that are passing between us. It's frequency. My vocal cords are generating a frequency field, and that frequency field passes through the ether until it hits the ears, and they decode that frequency field into electrical information, which is fed to the brain, and the brain then decodes it into the words that we hear. And everything is frequency decoded by the body into the sense of reality that we're experiencing. So when you die, you don't die. You are consciousness. You are infinite, eternal consciousness, or expression of it anyway in this reality. What dies is the body. And what happens then? The body ceases to function, and it ceases to decode this reality. So suddenly your consciousness finds yourself in another reality, what we call a near-death experience. And so death is just the death of the body. If this computer ceases to function and the screen goes black, what do we say? My computer's died. Exactly. It stopped decoding the internet onto the screen. That's all death is. But they want us frightened of death and fearful of death and in terror of death, because that, well, produces more loose for a start. So everything is a field of energy, information, including the body, ultimately, which we are decoding into a physicality, a holographic physicality. You look at holograms now, where they are getting so sophisticated that you can often not even tell them. And soon the people involved in that say you won't be able to tell the difference between reality that you say is real and holographic reality, because this is all holographic, because it's all going on in here. And so what we're doing when we look at anything is we're looking at a field of information, and that field of information is decoded frequency into a physical reality within here. And so when you're looking at someone who looks human, what you're looking at is a field of information that we call human. But these non-human entities that infiltrate our world, they're hybrids. They have a human field and they have a non-human field. And obviously the human field is the one that's projected at the world most of the time, unless they're among their own. And so you look at someone with a human field, or that level of the hybrid that is the human field, and you will see a human. But when that other field, reptilian or non-human of some form, becomes the dominant one and overrides the human field, to the observer, they have shifted from a human being, solid, into a non-human entity, solid. But that's your decoding process that's delivering that illusion. What has happened is that a field of information carries the human genetic field, if you like, has been overridden by a non-human field. And it's the same principle as when, like I said, the UFO comes into visible light. It appears out of nowhere and it leaves visible light and it disappears into nowhere. Well, it hasn't disappeared at all. It's just entered visible light and left. And it's all this decoding illusion based on the frequency band that we are decoding into an apparently human world. And so shape-shifting, people say, you can't go from a solid body to another solid body. No, you can't. No, you can't. I'm the first one to say, of course you can't. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is a field of information that's been overridden by another field of information in these hybrid bloodlines. And to the observer, there's been a physical shift, but it's not a physical shift. It's a shift of information, which means a shift in the information decoded and therefore the way it appears to the observer. And shape-shifting has been talked about for as long as humanity's been around, really. The old ancients and the shamans of the ancient world were talking about all this stuff. And when you talk to the number of people that I have about their experiences, and all walks of life and backgrounds, extraordinary stories that I've been told by different people, that they've experienced this, seeing this shift from one form to another, then to write it off as drugs. People are drugged, and they want them to think that they're shape-shifting reptilians. Well, she should have been with me for the last 35 years, and seen all the undrugged people that have told me their stories. This thing is real. And like I say, we need to understand this non-human dimension, which is driving all this, to understand why they do the rituals, why they do the because people are overwhelmingly possessed people. And so these entities, astral entities, they override. They don't necessarily have to possess them the entire time, but at the appropriate time, shall we say, they'll come in and they'll override the energy field of the. And when the people is the entity, overriding entity, operating in the astral, is drawing off the energy of the child. There is a point, of course, that we call puberty. And puberty appears to be a chemical, hormonal transformation. And yes, on one level it is. But what's driving that transformation is an energetic information change transformation that happens at that point in the development of a human. And these entities, for whatever reason, want that energy before puberty happens. This is why they are obsessed with children. This is why people are attracted on a scale that beggars belief. See, when I first started coming across this in the 90s, it wasn't the fact that it was happening that shocked me, because if it's possible, then someone will be doing it. The scale of it is what shocked me. And people are just starting to grasp a little bit of what the scale is. It's bloody everywhere. And so what the entity is doing as it overrides the power is it's drawing the energy of the child off. And I quote people, various shamans in my books, who talk about how these entities, which they give different names to depending on the culture, are drawing off this energy of children, so that the child's energy at the end of this process is far, far less vibrant and vivid than it was before, because they've basically taken their energy. And so this is what's happening. The people is actually a conduit to draw off the child's energy. And in the same way, you've got the rituals, and overwhelmingly they are sacrificing, because again, they're drawing off that energy pre-puberty. And you know, we're kind of light years beyond Trump or Harris, where the mainstream alternative media is Trump or Harris, you know, it's a Democrats. Look where we are, and I'm covering just a tiny fraction of what I've uncovered in the last 35 years, which gives you a completely different perspective on the world and why what happens in the world is happening and is being made to happen. Now, why do they want us fused with AI? What is AI? Okay, algorithmic AI, yeah, okay, one level. And then there's other AI, that's another level. But what is the AI that they want to connect us to, really? It's these entities. It's a frequency connection to these entities. And at that point, those entities are doing our thinking and they're doing our emotional reaction. And if you want to generate maximum, quote, loosh, then you want control of what people think and what people emotionally feel. And that's the real reason. They want to create a hive mind where they can centrally dictate human thought and emotion through AI and this AI connection, this AI fusion. And so people like Ray Kurzweil at Google, the so-called futurist, who claims to be the person alive today who's been talking about this for longest, he says that by 2030, he said this a few years ago, by 2030, humans will be fused with artificial intelligence, connected to it. It's already happening. And that once that connection is made, the AI will be doing more and more, his words, the AI will be doing more and more of human thinking until human thinking is negligible. In other words, deleted. And at that point, we become AI terminals on an AI internet. Now, what's the conduit? What's the conduit, this AI connection? Well, it's an electromagnetic field. We call it the cloud. That's what Kurzweil talks about. He says we'll be connected to the cloud in 2030 onwards. So you can create this cloud, this electromagnetic, technologically generated cloud of information, the conduit through which you can flow your frequencies of AI to the human mind. But you're still not going to cover the entire planet that way. with the cloud, the technologically generated cloud. To really cover the whole planet, you need low orbit satellites. Well, who's putting up tens of thousands of low orbit satellites? SpaceX and Elon Musk. Who's coming on behind? Amazon and Jeff Bezos with the same thing. And the idea is that you connect to humans via this cloud. You're putting in frequencies in this cloud, which the human body is decoding. But to really do that powerfully, you need a receiver in the body, preferably in the brain, to pick up those frequencies. And how does the brain think? What's the process? It's electrical. Neurons fire. The brain is electrical in the way that it works. And if you can mess with the electrical interaction within the brain, you mess with the perceptions of that person. And there's another thing that graphene is famous for, and that is that it amplifies electromagnetic fields. So if you come into contact with an electromagnetic field, if you've got graphene in the body, it will amplify the effect of that field on the body. Perfect if you're talking about the cloud. And now they're starting to move the so-called mRNA system into other vaccines. And if you look at those that have investigated deeply the chemtrails coming out of aircraft, not contrails, which disperse quickly, but contrails, which pan out and fall to Earth eventually. I think geoengineering.org, I think, is a real front runner in this. And they've talked to whistleblowers within the government departments in America that relate to chemtrails. And they say there's graphene in the chemtrails. But what they're saying is it's not officially acknowledged because they don't test at the nano level that the graphene exists in. And you look at all these different sources of graphene, and they're bombarding us with it, but on a nano level. And the idea is that the hive mind, which I've been warning about for decades was the plan, delivers the frequencies of the hive mind, and the graphene and the other nano self-replicating material picks it up and decodes it into the hive mind perception. And you know, I said earlier that we are consciousness. And there's a level of us that we call mind, which is an electromagnetic field, which the brain processes. Consciousness doesn't come from the brain, it comes through the brain. But we are part of an infinite field of information, knowledge, awareness, consciousness. To control us, this non-human force within this multi-leveled matrix, the astral's part of this matrix, I'll go into in my books, they need to disconnect this incarnate level of awareness from that infinite level of awareness. And one of the big ways they do it is to focus your attention. They want your focus of attention on the 5 sense world. Because what you know, if I look into this room, then I'm seeing the room. But if I do that and focus on that, the room's disappeared. I can just see that finger. And what they want us is in that mode. So we're so focused on the 5 sense world that it's all exists, that we lose the panorama. So we don't see how the dots connect because we're too busy focusing on that. And so they have to disconnect the influence of expanded levels of consciousness with incarnate consciousness that's experiencing through the body, briefly. And so what they've been working on over the decades and the hundreds of years and thousands of years is doing just that. But what they want is to stop that happening at all. Because you'll see in the world, there are different levels of awareness. People have different levels of awareness. Some have very expanded awareness. Some have very myopic awareness, because they're tapping into different levels of their multi-level field, multi-dimensional field. What this force wants is to hold them in a smaller area of the field as possible, the one that directly experiences through the 5 senses is the ideal. Because once you start realizing that you are not your body, that you are not human, that you are consciousness having a brief experience as a human through this body which decodes the world of human, the more you expand your awareness and your self-identity of who you really are, consciousness, eternal infinite consciousness, the more you expand and expand and expand into greater and greater swathes of the field. And eventually you break out of this prison matrix, which is a perceptual prison. And you start to then see things you couldn't see before. What do we call this? We call it awakening. True awakening. Not awakening where your prison cell gets slightly bigger. Oh, it's the Democrats that are the deep state. You're still in a prison cell. But when you break through that into a self-identity that not just understands conceptually, but lives, I am consciousness, then you start breaking into these levels of awareness that hold the information where you can see things that others can't see, not because you're better than them, but because they're here, because that's what their perception is. I'm just a human. I'm just the labels of human, or I'm subject to some judgmental God. Either way works. But when you start to expand your awareness, you start to see it. It becomes clear to you. You start to be able to encompass things, metaphysical things happening in the world that others will reject by reflex action. What they want to do is stop that happening. So how do you start that happening? What's the process? You start to ask the big questions. Who am I? Where am I? What is this place? What am I doing here? And you start to expand your questions into the big questions. You start to access big answers. Now, does anyone think that when or if we allow AI to become the human mind, to become the human thought processes and the human emotional reactions, that AI will be asking on our behalf the big questions? Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing here? No, of course not. It will just be conformity, unquestioning conformity. And without asking the big questions and pursuing them, you cannot break out of this consciousness myopia. And that's what connecting the human brain and body to artificial intelligence is all about. It's to stop anyone asking the big questions, or even asking questions like, why is this guy telling us what to do? I mean, who is this guy? No, you just do it. This is what it's about. We are on the cusp. And again, this is why I've been so vehement in my exposure and all the abuse that followed of this hijacked alternative media. It's because it's holding people in myopia. It's the Democrats, deep state. When without accessing this expanded level of awareness, which anyone can do, just have to break down the onion skins of programming. That's what it is. We are already infinite awareness. Reason we're not being influenced by it is because of all these layers of programming from cradle to bloody grave that we're subject to. Perceptual programming. So this is the real reason for the AI. And this is what Trump is a frontman for, bringing this in the United States and the wider world. Then you've got China pushing it on. You've got the European Union pushing it on. You've got Britain pushing it on. And what they've done, and this is all part of the perceptional process, is they've turned it into a race. Oh, we must get to the AI utopia first. We can't let China do it. No, we've got to take regulation off so that we get there before the Chinese. And Britain, Starmer says, oh, we want to be the center of AI, and the European Union says the same. And it's all bringing about this human artificial intelligence connection, which will be the end of humanity as we know it if we allow it to happen.
Well said, David. You've been very generous with your time, and I find some of this particularly terrifying because we've got a 1-year-old baby here, so we've got to protect him at all costs. Now,
well, that's an important point. That's an important point, because I've got kids and grandkids, and that's what drives me on, and not just my kids and grandkids, but everyone else's kids and grandkids. Your child, you know. This is why we've got to grow up. We've got to find some maturity. We've got to open our bloody minds, because it's closed minds that got us into this mess. Did anyone think that this cult wants open human minds? It wants closed human minds, and it's got people out there who are closing minds all over the place. You've got religions closing minds. If you believe in a religion, there's vast areas, whichever one it is. There's vast areas of potential awareness, knowledge, insight that you won't go there. You won't go there because it will breach the walls of your religious belief and a political belief, left, right, MAGA, whatever. You won't go somewhere else where insight, information might be beneficial to you, because you ain't going to leave your political belief system. We've got to put down these fault lines of division, these fault lines and these walls of perceptual programming here and no further, and open our minds to what's really going on. And I tell you, it's nothing like we think is going on.
David, can you tell the viewers where they can find you and follow you? I believe you're back on some of the platforms now, and what books or tours you've got coming up.
Well, I'm on X, Twitter X, because I can't not be, because the free speech absolutist image would be destroyed. But the others, I've still not got a channel on YouTube or anything like that. Though some people do post things sometimes on YouTube, and some get taken down, some get left. Davidicke.com is my website, and we've got a media platform called Iconic, which does news programs virtually every day. Does news programs every day, looking at the world from another angle, if you like. And also, we do full-length documentaries. I've done a few on the nature of reality and the nature of a lot of what we've been talking about today, Shaun. And I'm going to be talking in London. I think the details will be circulated soon. I've been asked to talk in London in October. And then I've got a new book out in a few months, which I think is the best thing I've done. I've done so far, and it's just flowed onto the page, and there's some fantastic information in it. A lot of which has come while I've been writing it, which is really it's like whoa, another level. And I'll be doing a speaking tour in the new year around Britain. I have to be around Britain because I'm banned from 30 European countries and Australia and lots of other places if I try to get in them. I know the alternative media stars are not banned from those places, which is kind of what are they saying or not saying that I am? But anyway, yeah, so I'll be doing that, and I will be doing what I'm doing to the day at some point I keel over, because the one thing, you know, mate, I've not been able to understand over this 35 years is how I've seen people come and I've seen people go. They've been stars for and flavor of the month for a while, and then they've disappeared. Because once you have an inkling of what's happening and you see the scale and the depth of depravity of what's happening, not least to kids, then walking away is utterly unthinkable. And how people can come get a certain amount of information about what's happening, enough, and then say, oh, you know, it's the kitchen's too hot, or I'm not doing this anymore. I can't understand that, because there's nothing more important than getting this information out. Why? And why the censorship? It's because we get our perceptions from information received, and these people want to control the information we receive, and thus people putting out information they don't want us to receive are dangerous and must be silenced and censored. That's how it works.
Thank you, David. I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to close the show.
Okay,
and,
mate.
But huge thank you for your time, and you take care. If there's anything we can do for you, just let us know. Thank you, David.
All right, mate. See ya. Bye.
Cheers. So, viewers, another phenomenal interview with David. Please support his work. All of his links are going to be in the description box below this video. You know, I've been reading his books for decades. Absolutely phenomenal. I would urge people to go and see him. I've been to see him. And, you know, throughout this interview, we referenced various things. Mark Epstein, David referenced, citing the cause of death of Jeffrey as not being self-unalivement. Well, we've interviewed Mark Epstein recently. I'll put the link in the description box for that one. And please let us know in the comments what you have thought about this interview. It's been a while since we interviewed David, and he did come under a lot of flack. When Trump won the elections, he was out, you know, David was outspoken, predicted certain things, and they've all come true. And now the detractors are scrambling to say, oh, it's because of this or because of that. Poppycock. David has called it right, and don't listen to him at your peril. So thanks for tuning in, folks.